Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for the final Have Your Say video for season 16 and this is for episode 16 which was the finale. Today I'll be recapping the finale episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll, and I'll be talking about some recent drama involving a mandatory meeting calling out a designer. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start by recapping the episode. So we start off with quite a fun performance from RuPaul sitting in a limousine living her life, and this is obviously for her new song. And the part that I thought was the coolest was it looks like RuPaul is in the backseat of a car and then it kind of gets pulled away and then she's actually on stage, and I thought that was quite a cool transition. One thing we noticed straight away that's a bit different from other finales is that this finale is in the so-called new main stage, which is where they did the lip sync Lollapalooza last week, rather than in a big theatre like usual in the finales. And I will say I was slightly disappointed that this wasn't in a big theatre because it did feel very small compared to the usual type of finale we get. And we also didn't get any Drag Race alums coming back in the audience as we've seen in previous finale episodes. And this has been talked about quite a lot by the contestants and at Roscoe's, for example, but apparently because of the writer's strike that happened in Hollywood around the time of filming, they actually filmed the main show like they usually do, and then normally they wait for quite a long time to film the finale, but apparently because of the writer's strike, they actually filmed the whole thing right after the taping of the regulars part of the season, which meant that no one had seen any of the season yet, and I do think that did detract slightly from the ambiance because no one knew who any of these queens were. But I liked the fact that the queens got to come back, they each got to walk the runway one last time and show themselves in a different outfit perhaps, and I think you could see a slight difference in some of the queens, but it wasn't quite as big a transformation as maybe we've seen in previous seasons because these queens filmed this finale only a few months after they finished taping the actual season. Okay, so first up for the finale performance, we have the first of the top three, which is Nymphia Wind. So Nymphia sung a song called Queen of Wind. Out of all of the top three songs, this one was actually my favourite. I really love the song. I think it's such a cool message and it's just a really good song. I thought Nymphia's performance was amazing. I loved that she was talking about her heritage and really showing off her culture. I thought she also just looked beautiful and I loved the different transitions that she had on the stage, and she just looked really natural, and the whole part of obviously being Wind with her last name being Nymphia Wind, I think that was just such a cool throwback and it really tied together her performance on the whole season. And who doesn't love a great moment with a fan blowing around lots of fabric? It just looked so cool. One thing also I'd love to hear if you noticed this as well, and it just was quite funny, and I did actually tweet about this, but when RuPaul is talking to the queens, you can tell that RuPaul is just looking straight at the camera and not at the actual queen, and there were certain shots where you could really see that RuPaul was just not at all looking at the queen, she was just looking straight forward, and it was just kind of funny. And we know that RuPaul does this, she's always going to look directly in her camera, but I just thought in this particular setup it was just so obvious and it kind of just felt a little bit odd. Next up, we had Plain Jane, and Plain Jane performed her song Bodysuit. And I thought this was a fun song. Out of the three, I will say this was probably my least favourite just because I didn't feel like it really spoke that much to what we know of Plain Jane. I know that she has been criticised in the past for wearing a lot of bodysuits, but I don't think it was really mentioned enough during the season for it to be kind of her thing. I think there were other things that Plain Jane did throughout the season that were more stereotypical of Plain Jane. But as usual, she looked amazing on stage. She's always serving great body. I thought her reveal from one bodysuit into another bodysuit was really funny. And I think she was the one who, out of all of them, incorporated humour into her performance, which was really interesting. And it was a catchy song, but like I said, probably just not quite my favourite, because I don't think it really spoke to who Plain Jane is, in my opinion. And then finally, we had Sapphira Cristál with her song Dance. I really loved this opening part of Sapphira's performance with the piece of fabric. I thought that was just such a cool effect and it was so eye-catching on stage. And I mean, Sapphira is just such a great performer that all eyes are on her. And I also loved that they were incorporating the fact that it was opera style of singing, which is obviously what Sapphira is known for, especially because of her talent show. I thought Sapphira did a really good job in this. I thought the song itself was maybe not quite as powerful as Nymphia's, but I thought it was really fun. It was really upbeat. I thought Sapphira looked great on stage, and I think she really kept up with the other dancers, and she was definitely the focal point of the performance. She didn't get lost in the mix like perhaps some of the others did. But as I said earlier, out of the 3 performances, I did prefer Nymphia's because I thought it was a really, really good song and she just performed it so well, and it was probably the song that I personally would choose to listen to out of the 3. And this obviously does raise quite an interesting question of how much input do the queens actually get in terms of their performances in the songs, because if it's not 100% done by them, is it really fair to judge them based on the song alone if they didn't actually write the song to begin with? And they did talk about this at Roscoe's this week, which I'll link to in the description. But basically, Lady Camden, who was obviously on season 14, said because she was in the finale on her season, you get to give some prompts to the show and they will create the song for you, but other than that you don't really necessarily have that much control. And if that's the case on this season, then I guess it is quite difficult to really compare any of this because the queens themselves didn't necessarily write it. Although saying that, Plain Jane did tweet saying that she came up with the song for Bodysuit herself. We then had some really lovely moments, like for example there was the tribute to the actress that does the character of Elvira. And they also had a really lovely moment when all of the queens thanked their mothers for all of the support they've had. And I think that was such a lovely message and a really heartwarming moment. But then we find out that Plain Jane does not make it to the top 2. And I will say I wasn't that surprised. I think throughout the season, although she's done really well, I think in the end it did come down to Nymphia and Sapphira for me. And I think also in the final 3 performances, hers was my least favourite. Although it was still very good, it wasn't quite at the same level in my opinion as Nymphia and Sapphira. But she was still a very good competitor and I think she'll be great on an All Stars. So then we got to see a performance from last season's winner, which is obviously Sasha Colby, who as always looks amazing and she just is such a great performer, very eye-catching. And my favourite moment was actually when she kept opening and closing the zip on her outfit, and I just thought that was such a simple but effective thing to do in the lip sync. And then Sasha comes out in her step down look, and of course she looks absolutely amazing. I think there's no surprise that Sasha is always going to turn a look. The eliminated queens then come out and do a mini performance, and they're in the colours of red, white and blue. And I thought this was a really cool moment. I like that the queens get to perform one last time. And we find out that they're doing this because they're going to announce who was the winner of Miss Congeniality. So the first winner that was announced is Tsunami Muse. This didn't necessarily surprise me. She was one of the people who I thought was going to win, so that I definitely agreed with. The part that I was slightly surprised about though is the second winner was announced as Sapphira Cristál. And although I do agree, I definitely think that Sapphira was one of the worthy people of winning Miss Congeniality. It's very surprising because normally the top 3 or the top 2 are not eligible to be voted for. So I thought this was quite interesting. And we will talk about this a little bit later, but to me, when Sapphira won Miss Congeniality as well, it did instantly make me think that she wasn't going to win the actual show because of that, because we've never had a winner who won the whole show plus Miss Congeniality. And then finally, we had the final lip sync for the win between Sapphira and Nymphia to the song Padam Padam by Kylie Minogue. I thought this was a great performance. I mean, I love both of these queens. I would be happy with either of them winning. I will say I was slightly confused by Sapphira's vampire teeth at the beginning. I thought maybe that was going to go somewhere and there was some kind of message behind it perhaps, but it just kind of didn't really seem to go anywhere, so I was a little bit confused by that. I was thinking maybe Padam Padam, which is to do with the heart, and obviously vampires drink blood, but other than that I'm not 100% sure if it was just something that was interesting to look at. But I think the moment that is obviously going to go down in Drag Race history was that moment when Nymphia opened up her coat and all of those balloons came out, and that was clearly meant to be the Sasha Velour petal moment. But this was such a cool reveal. We've never seen balloons done like this before, and it also tied in really well because she had the boba tea on her head, and obviously the black balloons I assume are supposed to be the boba pearls. And I just think Nymphia absolutely smashed this. She did so many different reveals. I thought the reveal that didn't necessarily come across that well but was actually one of the coolest reveals was when she did a kind of cartwheel and her outfit came off during the cartwheel. It didn't necessarily come across that much on camera, but that was so cool. But to me, the moment that Nymphia definitely was obviously going to win was when she did that handstand against the wall and then went into the splits. I think Sapphira also did a great job and she was very funny and she's a great performer, but overall, in my opinion, Nymphia won it from about a minute or so into the song. So the lip sync ends and we find out that the winner of Drag Race Season 16 is Nymphia Wind. And I was not surprised by this because although I had been Team Sapphira up until this point, as soon as I saw the finale, I think that Nymphia did do the best overall in the episode. I think she had the best performance and song, but I also think that she had the best storyline with her mother being there, which was really, really nice. And also her lip sync in the end was definitely the best. And I would have been happy with either of these two queens winning, but I do think Nymphia was incredible in this episode and she will be an amazing winner to carry the crown for the next year. So congratulations to Nymphia Wind, the winner of Season 16. So let's now move on to the result of the Have Your Say poll, where you get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode. And as I've done previously, because this was a finale, I have had to change the questions slightly to adapt to the format of this episode. So question 1 was, who would you have voted for to win Miss Congeniality? And with 56.6% we had Sapphira Cristál. And I definitely agree. As I said, I do think Sapphira was the most congenial, and if she hadn't been in the top 2, I 100% would have thought she would have won. But because she was in the top 2, I was really surprised that she actually was eligible to be voted for. Next we had Tsunami Muse for 21.8%, and again I do definitely agree, that was the person who I thought was going to win after Sapphira, so that wasn't too much of a surprise to me. And then the queen that got the third most votes was Mirage with 4%. And again, I do agree, for me it was between Mirage and Tsunami if we discount Sapphira for a moment, because I thought that she wouldn't be eligible, because I think Mirage was just so sweet on the season and she seemed to get on with everyone, so I wasn't that surprised that she was the third highest in this vote. Question 2 was, whose finale performance did you like the most? And this was actually very split. We had 49.7% for Nymphia Wind and 46.4% for Sapphira Cristál, with Plain Jane getting 4%. And I do agree that Nymphia's performance was the best to me. I do think that Sapphira's was also great, but I thought that Nymphia's song was just so much catchier, but also her performance was probably a bit more memorable. Question 3 was, whose finale outfit did you like the most? And again, with the highest amount of votes, it was Nymphia Wind with 72.6%. And I agree, Nymphia always turns a look, but both of the outfits that she had at the finale were stunning. Not only her performance one, but also the one that she lip-synced in and any other outfits that she showed. Nymphia definitely is, I think, the fashion queen of this season. Question 4 was, who did better in the final lip sync? And again, with a pretty solid majority, we have 88.2% for Nymphia Wind, with Sapphira Cristál getting 11.8%. And as I said, I do agree, I do think that Nymphia did a lot better in this lip sync. She had so many reveals that were really well thought out, and I think as soon as she opened that coat and the balloons came out, it was game over. Question 5 was, do you agree with who won the season? And this was interesting because it was a little bit more split than I thought it was going to be. So we had 74.7% for yes and only 25.3% for no. I thought perhaps that no might get a little bit more because Sapphira has been so high in the votes so far, but I can see that when I watched the episode, I do think that Sapphira didn't quite do as well as Nymphia, and I do think that Nymphia really had such an amazing storyline and performance throughout the whole episode. Question 6 was, do you like the new main stage better than the old main stage? And we had 58.5% for yes and 41.5% for no. I do like the main stage, that I think it does look a bit more elevated than the old stage. My only concern is I'm not sure if it would be really that great for the regular episodes. I think for something like a Lip Sync Lollapalooza it works well, but I think the shape of the stage and the lighting that they had was all quite dark. Maybe they could obviously change that for the runways, but I found that when the queens were coming out at the beginning, I wasn't able to really see that much of the detail of their outfits because I felt like they kind of got swallowed up by the stage a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that and whether that is going to be the format for future seasons. Question 7 was, how much did you enjoy the season 16 finale, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most? And with the most amount of votes by far, we had 5 and 4, which basically means that people really enjoyed this finale. And I do agree, although I said earlier that I think the finale felt a little bit small and maybe not quite as grand as some of the other finales we've had in the past because it wasn't in a big theatre, I still think it was a great finale. I loved the performances, and it's interesting to see how the show has progressed over the years and the finales have also changed. But as I said, I personally would have preferred a traditional style finale in a huge theatre after the show has come out, so it feels a little bit more like an all-stars moment of the queens getting their recognition. And I would have also loved to have seen some Drag Race alums in the audience as well to really tie it together. And then finally we had question 8, which was how much did you enjoy season 16 overall? And again, 4 and 5 got the most votes by far, so people did really enjoy season 16. And I do agree, I think season 16 was a great season. I really enjoyed the cast. I think there was a decent amount of drama to keep the season interesting, but we also had some amazing looks and some really cool challenges. But let me know in the comments what you think. Did you enjoy season 16 as much as you enjoyed seasons 15 and 14? Okay, so let's move on to some of the comments from the Have Your Say poll. So, starting with some Patreon comments, my Patreon member Ashley said, I thought Sapphira Cristál was going to win, but congratulations to Nymphia Wind. And as I said, I do agree, I was Team Sapphira because I think that she did so well in the season, but I do think Nymphia was a very, very deserving winner, and she did do better in the finale. My Patreon Emmy said something similar and said, I did not see Nymphia Wind winning. I was 100% sure Sapphira had this in the bag. I legit screamed when they announced Nymphia as the winner in a positive way. My Patreon member Shelby said that Nymphia pulled a Sasha Velour on all of us, and I assume that's referring to the reveal with the balloons. And she said we didn't know her lip sync skills until the finale, and she slayed both performances. And I agree, I do think that Nymphia perhaps had a slight advantage that she'd never lip synced before, apart from in the girl group challenge, which is not quite the same, because everything she was doing was fresh and she hadn't necessarily shown all of her tricks and splits, whereas we had seen Sapphira lip sync a couple of times. And my Patreon member Steven said, I thought it was a dead giveaway of what was about to happen when they gave Sapphira Miss Congeniality. We've never had Miss Congeniality win. And I think what Steven is saying is we've never had a winner of the entire season who was also Miss Congeniality. And I do agree, this was for me something that as soon as I saw that Sapphira was Miss Congeniality, I did think that her chances of winning were pretty much next to none, because it would be quite a big thing for them to give her both the winner of the season and Miss Congeniality. I just can't quite see that happening. So this unfortunately did, for me, give a little bit of a hint that Sapphira might not win. And in terms of the comments from my Have Your Say poll, someone said, we all thought Sapphira was going to win, but we all hoped Nymphia would be, and she did. And I do agree, I think Nymphia is great representation. We've only ever had one other Asian winner on the US version, which was Raja in season 3. So I do think this is great representation, but also Nymphia is also just an incredibly talented queen. Quite a few people also said that they wanted a reunion. And I do agree that I would have loved to have seen an actual sit-down reunion because we didn't really get to see that much interaction between the queens. And I think we all wanted to see the final showdown between Plain Jane and Amanda. And then finally, there were quite a few comments from people saying that they felt like this finale was smaller, and also multiple people mentioned that this is the same stage apparently that they use for the Secret Celebrity Drag Race, and they said that it didn't really work for the finale. And as I've said, I have mentioned this quite a few times in this video, I do wish that it was in a big theatre, and I do wish that it was a slightly bigger thing for the finale. But if they had to film this with some kind of limitations due to the writer's strike in Hollywood that was happening at the time, I can see why this was a slightly smaller finale than usual. But I do hope they don't do this for other seasons going forward, because I don't think it quite had the same impact. But let me know in the comments what you thought. Did you really like this finale compared to the traditional finales, or did you prefer this style of it being slightly smaller? And so now we're going to be talking about a little bit of recent drama which involves a mandatory meeting calling out a designer. So, as I'm sure you'll remember, Amanda was critiqued a few times on the show for her makeup and her outfits. And Amanda even said herself, while the show was airing, that her makeup skills had improved since they filmed the show over a year ago, and because the finale was filmed so soon after the filming of the actual season, her improvement didn't really get shown on the show. Amanda also mentioned while she was at Roscoe's that she had gone through a divorce right before she was on the show, and her financial situation was also not the best, which may have contributed to the quality of her runways. However, it seems that Amanda has now also hinted at another reason why she may have struggled with some of the runway outfits throughout the season. A few days after the season 16 finale aired, Amanda tweeted saying, "My advice to anyone getting ready for season 17 is make everyone who works on your package sign an NDA and a contract that specifically outlines ramifications for them if they don't finish your bleep in time for filming. Hopefully you won't show up with 5 incomplete runways like I did." And Amanda then followed this up by saying, "By the way, I quote this as a genuine piece of advice for future performers going on the show, but y'all have fun using it as another reason to hate on me, it just keeps me relevant and on your timeline." A Twitter user then replied to Amanda and said that it's awful what happened to her with the designer and they basically set her up for failure. And they also wondered how many other Drag Race queens have been put in the bottom or sent home due to an incomplete outfit that wasn't their fault. And Amanda replied to the Twitter user and said, "And then imagine going to one designer for multiple looks and they finish nothing." Another Twitter user then told Amanda to name the designer so that no one would work with them again. And Amanda said, "To be honest, be wary of anyone who has an Emmy for designing for drag queens. The best people I worked with were lesser known." So from that, it sounds like it was a prominent and well-known designer who let Amanda down, but she didn't confirm who it was. And we know that this issue of designers letting the queens down has happened to other queens as well, such as Maya Iman LePage, who revealed at Roscoe's that she didn't get 5 of her outfits for this season because her designer, quote, screwed her over. And apparently on the morning Maya was flying out to LA to film Drag Race, she was still waiting for the designer to contact her back, but they never did. And that meant that Maya had to scramble to pull things together at the last minute, which may explain why Maya had some very simple looks for some of her runways. You may also remember that when All Stars 8 was airing, Heidi N Closet called out a well-known designer called Joshua Naponte, and Miss Fiercelicious from Canada's Drag Race was also in the live video with Heidi and said that she had had issues with the same designer. And in the video, Heidi said that this designer had agreed to make one outfit for Heidi for All Stars 8, but then he apparently ghosted her even though he was always on social media. And he was also allegedly rude to Heidi during an event, and Heidi confronted him about it. And so this issue of designers letting the queens down and not delivering the looks seems to be quite a big issue, and there have been countless queens who have had similar experiences with designers. So it's something to bear in mind when looking at a queen's runway package, because it might not always be their fault. So there you go, there was the final Have Your Say for Drag Race Season 16 Episode 16, which was the finale. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me for my Have Your Say videos. This was a new video series that I started this season and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but you've all been so supportive in the comments, so I'm so glad that you all liked this series. So, did you enjoy Season 16 overall, and was it better than previous seasons? And do you agree with the winner of the season? Let me know in the comments. And I'd just like to give a shout out to all of my incredible Patreon members. In the You're a Winner Baby tier we have Alan, Anna, Ashley, Bailey, Emerald1508, Ethan, Josh, Kat, Lisa, PC Smush, Rachel, Rochelle, Sam, Shelby, Shara and William. And in the Shantae You Stay tier we have Amy, Becky, Brennan, Charlie, David, Emmy, Kerry, Linda and Stephen. You are all absolutely incredible. I love my Patreon so much. Your support really does truly mean so much to me, and it really does make a huge difference to my channel, so thank you all so much. And if you'd like to have your comment featured in my Have Your Say videos, as well as get early access to my videos and priority when submitting interview questions, please consider signing up to my Patreon and supporting my channel, and I'll put a link in the description. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video, as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!